pjnet.tv. It is Monday night, a brand new week, 9 p.m. on the East Coast. We have a first-time guest standing by, and we are recording. We are running a bumper. We have a background waiting. We have a chat room waiting. We are streaming live on 9 social media destinations. We'll count down to Studio 8 in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Well, good evening and welcome to pjnet.tv. I'm Coach Prasick, and it's a brand new week, and we have a brand new guest. There's a story here. Oh, by the way, if you're watching this on Facebook or Twitter or YouTube, we certainly are glad that you've joined us. And if you are live in our chat room, we are especially grateful for those. If you're watching this on YouTube live, Facebook and all that, if you're watching live right now, if you go to pjnet.tv, there's a chat room there where you can watch the same thing and meet some wonderful people. I know them all personally. They're like my best friends, and you'll make some new friends. But speaking of new, we have a first-time guest tonight. Now, the story here is, this is a lifelong friend of PJNet, Gina Hood. Now, Debbie Ausburn, now that's not spelled O-S, that's A-U-S, Burn, is standing by, and she has known Gina since you have a picture or something of either your or her second birthday party, and both were present. So this is real, folks.
Yes, Gina and I don't remember ever not knowing Gina, but our parents were friends, and we are friends, and she will forever be 3 months older than I am.
So she's like your big sister.
That's right. That's right.
Now, we happen to know that during her high school years, she was known by the name Wildfire. Can you confirm or deny that?
Well, Gina and I have promised that all of our stories about each other for the rest of our lives will be positive. So if that's what she says, then I will confirm whatever she has said.
That's a safe way to do it. Okay, well, folks, there you heard it. We still don't know. All right. Recently, maybe not recently, but didn't you and Gina took a little trip here not too long ago across the world, maybe somewhere?
Yeah, it was a year and a half ago, January of 2019. I had a work that took me to Jerusalem, and my husband couldn't go, and Gina and I have traveled a lot of places, so she was my first choice for a travel buddy for Jerusalem and Tel Aviv and all points Israel.
Sounds like fun. Now, even though you and Gina grew up together, you kind of took some different paths. Gina went into the educational field, but you did not.
Right. I for my sins, became a lawyer. I worked.
Have you repented from that? Have you?
That's right. That's right. I actually started out as a social worker / probation officer in juvenile court in outside Atlanta, and was there for almost 4 years. Burned out and decided to go to law school. But I stayed involved with youth organizations. I just I guess the best way I can explain it was doing work as a social worker. I just felt like I was dipping out the ocean with a teaspoon.
I know that feeling. JD, a good friend of ours, I was sharing with him some of my ambitions, and he said, Mark, however hard you try and no matter how much you want to, you cannot boil the ocean. But I had to prove him wrong. I mean, that's how you motivate testosterone poisoned men, is tell them they can't do it, and they will proceed to, do it.
Yes. So it was, it was a great experience, and I learned a lot about the system and about working with kids, and I grew up with a heart for kids. My parents were involved in Sunday school classes and a summer camp and things like that. So all of us, my two siblings and I, all came in with a caring about people. The at-risk children were the ones that have especially spoken to my heart over the years.
Obviously, and we'll get into more of that in a minute, but did you drift into this and just got kind of sucked in it, or was it more of a decision that you made at some point in your career to help children particularly?
Well, like I said, I started out as a social worker. I stayed involved in volunteer work. As far as my legal practice goes, I think I just sort of drifted into it. I have career ADD, so I've a lot of different things, and found myself wherever I was, I would gravitate towards working with children. I was a federal prosecutor for a while and was assigned the crimes against children, child abuse, sex crimes. Was when I was in law school, I was worked as a weekend house parent at a shelter for runaway girls. And then when I came out of my after I ended my time as a prosecutor and came back home to Georgia and started working in civil practice, I found myself working with a lot of youth organizations because I understood them. I knew what was going on. I understood the business, if you will, and how the widgets were made. And in law, that always helps when you understand your client's business.
Are you still a social worker?
No, at
Okay,
heart,
good. Okay,
probably.
all right. Before I ask this question, I didn't want to jeopardize your
No.
job or anything. I hear mixed reports on child protective services, we call it here in Florida. I know some law enforcement officers that encourage you not to let children, to turn them over. If you had to give it a grade, what grade would you give it?
Well, um, most of the groups that I have worked with have been a lot of well-meaning people, but systems are just terrible. It's very hard to do any good when you have a system because every bureaucracy, every system, every corporation sets up policies to protect itself, and people and children can fall through the cracks. That plus it's a very hard, thankless job, and people, they just don't stay in it long. They either find a job somewhere else or they burn out. And so it is very hard to keep any institutional memory or keep any sort of consistency in the group. So it depends. Some are better than others. I would say range from a D to a B minus
Okay.
of the ones I've worked with.
You were in it a long time, though. How did you manage to sustain yourself?
Well, I left after it was only 4 years, and then I went into in the law field where I was. I could have limited involvement. It wasn't that I had a child that I had to, it wasn't that I had say in social work, I'd have a 7-year-old child, and I knew I was going to have to be trying to find somewhere for that child to live and work with them, their families, for 11 years, and then the children of those children. As a lawyer, I could get in, finish my case, and the bad guy off to jail, and I was done, and I could move on to the next one. And that limited role, for a long time, that was enough to sustain me. Eventually, I hit the top of the learning curve, and for many reasons, it was time to come back home to Georgia. But in law, I have found I'm able to look at a discrete problem, find a solution, and go on to the next problem. So it is not um, it is not nearly as draining as social work was.
On the one hand, you've got the bureaucratic and systemic issues
Mhm.
that you've already brought up, but you also are dealing with some bad situations day in and day out. There must have been some very grievous moments.
Oh, there were terrible situations. The when you're working with crimes against children, um, you're never dealing with pleasant things. There are always just variations on terrible. And then when you just see the damage that's been done to those children and how incredibly hard it is going to be for them to overcome that and succeed or thrive in their lives. It's possible. It's just extremely difficult. And so um, there are a lot of there were a lot of cases that I took home with me at night, and they
Mm-hmm.
were very hard um, to deal with and to overcome. But people in the helping professions, whether it's medicine or social work or law enforcement, you learn to um, protect yourself. You learn to distance. Gallows humor is um, one way that people cope with it. All internally, of course. Never for people outside to hear the kind of things that we use to cope with it.
In dealing with all that, there must have been some tremendous victories somewhere along the way.
Um, Sometimes, I have a great relationship with one of my long-term foster daughters. Other kids, I've had great relationships with them, and then they drifted off or moved on. I think most of it comes back to my Christian faith, and there's one incident that I remember. Very well. This was sort of midway through my service as a foster parent. I was single at the time, and this child had run away again. People who are involved in social work will tell you running away is a coping mechanism for kids, and runaways run away. It's what they do. And so this child had hit, I don't remember, it was a bad grade at school or break up with her boyfriend or something. Or maybe I'd grounded her. I don't remember the precipitating incident, but she was gone. I had made all the calls and was pacing the floor, absolutely furious, and praying, okay, God, when do I get to give up on this child? When are you going to let me off the hook and I can move on with my life? And I had I had this thought, and I knew it wasn't my thought. It wasn't quite a voice, but it was very distinctly the Holy Spirit saying to me, when do you want me to give up on you? It was not the answer I wanted to hear. but, but that was the answer I had. So, um, so yes, there have been wonderful moments. There have been great relationships. It's been the most challenging thing that I've ever done in my life, and I would do it all over again in a heartbeat.
With all that you've done and all that you've seen and all that you know, what type of person, if someone's out there thinking about going into social work, what type of person do you think that needs to be, and what warnings or cautions would you give them?
Um, a good dose of stubbornness is probably very helpful. a, a good dose of realism to understand that sometimes we can help. Sometimes we can help children overcome their trauma. Sometimes all we can do is just put a band-aid on and triage, like medics on the battlefield. You bandage up what you can and pass them on to the next caretaker, and hope that there's enough consistency for them to be able to overcome it. The So yeah, if I would say if people are going into it, they don't go in with stars in your eyes. Not everything's going to be perfect, and find ways to replenish your resources. You can't pour out of an empty cup, I think is a saying that is probably become trite nowadays, but it is very true. You have to find ways to recharge your batteries. And then there was, it's interesting, I went to see Lord of the Rings this past weekend, and there's one scene where the two main characters are trying to get past the enemy army, and one of them standing there saying, "We'll never get through." They're looking at thousands upon thousands of campfires between them and where they want to go. And Frodo says, "We'll never get through." And Sam, his companion, says, "Well, we have to. There's no help for it, but let's just get to the bottom of the hill for starters." And I think that there's a lot of wisdom there for people going into the helping professions. You learn, let's just get to the bottom of the hill for starters and concentrate on one day at a time and not look too far ahead.
Now, Debbie, I'm not going to ask you how old you are, but I would
Not a
assume
lot, someone who's 39. So.
a lot of women say that. I won't tell you my answer. Not on the air. But
Okay.
ask me later. In the trenches, 4 years, in the legal profession, foster parenting. Did you just chronicle this stuff and journal this stuff and it turned into a book, or what compelled you to? It doesn't sound much fun. Why would someone write a book such as raising other people's children, let alone why would someone read it?
Well, there's two groups that I think will find it helpful. One is the people who are foster parenting and who want to know how to do it right and how to deal with biological parents and those things. And then the other group is where I found myself in the I guess the second act of my life, which is I married a man with 5 kids. 3 of them were adults living on their own, but 2 kids still at home. And I have friends who've gone into step parenting. Unfortunately, it's an epidemic with with a lot of blended and reconstituted families. And I learned that the lessons that I had internalized, really, in writing this book, I had to dig deep and bring a lot to the surface because I had internalized so much. I had forgotten how I knew what I knew. Mm-hmm. But I realized that what I had learned from parenting foster children was invaluable for parenting other people's children in a step parenting situation. So, I've never had biological children. I have collected 7 children and 8 grandchildren over the years between foster parenting and adoption and my marriage. And so I've sort of, and now we're raising the daughter of one of my former foster daughters. So I've seen it from a lot of different perspectives, and I've learned a lot that I can pass on to people and make it much less traumatic. And I adore my children. I have good relationships with most of them, and I wouldn't trade it in. And I wanted to tell other people how to do the same.
No regrets?
A lot of mistakes, but no regrets.
Okay. Often wrong, but never in doubt. Okay.
That's right. That's right. And that's what my book is what I've learned from a lot of the mistakes I made.
This book is not out yet.
No, it is coming out in May of 2021.
It's a long time from now. What's so long?
It is. It is. I don't know what's taking them so long. I don't. They've got other books ahead of mine. I don't understand it, but that's what they tell me.
You know, at age 39, you ain't got a lot of time to wait around for stuff, you know.
That's right. That's right.
Don't they know that? Some of those younger authors wait.
Right.
But aren't 39 yet, as you say. Well, Debbie, I get the sense of I have spoken with a soldier that has returned from the front lines, and I commend you for what you're doing. I don't know how you sustain hope. Your faith, I'm sure, is a part of it. Now, this book you've written, is it a faith-based book, or is it something more of a general market?
It's more general market. I refer to my beliefs because my beliefs are part of who I am and part of what motivates me, and it centers my life. But I've spent most of my adult life working in the secular field, and I have to help people where they are. Mm-hmm. And maybe one of these days I'll write a faith-based book. But so many of my friends and so many of the children that I've worked with are lost in the secular world.
Excuse me, I jumped ahead. Well, you know, we're out of time. Actually, is the reason I was just trying to clear the book off the screen, but I'd already queued it up. Debbie, thank you for your service. You're a soldier, and you've got the battle scars and to prove it, but you've got a smile on your face to prove that it's been worth it. So we thank you for your service, and your stories have inspired us all. We hope you do well with your book, and we hope you'll come see us sometime here at pjnet.tv.
Anytime I'm invited. Thank you for the opportunity.
All right. Thank you, Debbie. All right, folks. Boy, that was different, wasn't it? Yes. Thank you, Gina Hood, for letting us know of your lifelong friend. What a story she has to tell. That's what we do here, folks. And in just a few moments at the bottom of the hour, Casper will be here with Casper's Take from the great state of Colorado. And I'm going to take a few minutes to take a break and get everything ready for him. Now, before I leave, I would like to ask you to ask yourself two important questions. Number one, what is the boldest thing you have ever done for Jesus Christ? And number two, how long ago was that? Folks, we've just heard testimony of a lifelong warrior contending with some of the manifestations of the spiritual warfare that we are, in fact, engaged in. It is my prayer that none of us would ever be satisfied with either answer to those two questions.